Good morning, everybody. My name is Liz Barron-Majerik, and as the Scotland Director for Lantra, it's my pleasure to officially welcome you to today's event, Practical Skills Solutions for a Changing Climate. Lantra is a charity that exists to help make sure that our land-based and aquaculture businesses can meet their skills needs. Our work in Scotland is supported by Scottish Government, but we also work with a range of agencies, businesses, industry bodies, some of which I'm delighted to see are represented here today. And some of you I have met before, some I haven't, but those of you that do know me know that almost above everything else, I like to get stuff done. And I know from the attendee and speaker list today that I am certainly not alone. But getting stuff done in relation to climate change is hard. Although there are no shortage of don't do's, there are conflicting ideas around what is the right thing to do. Many of the suggested approaches and changes are untried, and as many of the land-based businesses that will be impacted are small and often rural, with the associated logistical challenges, even a minor change can be relatively high risk. So, where to start? Well, I'm sure many of you have seen this graph or similar at some stage. Protein production globally is obviously incredibly important if we are to nourish our growing population, or even just to sustain the one that we have, particularly as the world experiences more extreme climate variations with all the associated crop failures and challenges around that. But what best to do for the land that we have? These are global averages, but the variation around that average is considerable. Should the global average set local limitations? And of course, it's not just about food. If we don't plant trees as a crop, we will not be able to produce enough timber to serve the needs of a growing, sustainable construction sector, or indeed to have enough cellulose to serve as the feedstock for a wide range of incredibly important plastic alternatives. But there has to be a balance, as we also need a wide range of diverse but interconnected habitats for our native wildlife. So the right crop in the right place, planted the right way, is important as well, as is restoring key habitats, storing carbon to help meet our national and global targets for diversity, wildlife, and for climate. And I'm delighted that today we're going to have an update on some exciting new training initiatives within this area. So essentially, we need to be able to make the right decision for a specific area, but at the same time, keep in mind that national picture and international picture, because what we don't plant, the crops that we don't produce and harvest, will have that global impact too, such as potentially the deforestation of a more ancient woodland elsewhere. Obviously, there is no one size fits all. It would certainly be easier if it was, and I don't know about the rest of you, but post-COVID-19 times, the idea of one size fitting all is incredibly attractive indeed. But it doesn't work like that. It is complicated, beautifully so in many ways. The complexity revealing interactions, interdependencies, and impacts that we weren't aware of before. Our climate crisis is, of course, a crisis, but it's also attracting more interest in the study of our natural world and its changing climate. And although this is, of course, for land-based, mainly a rural issue, it's not just rural. Urban wildlife, natural spaces, community gardens are incredibly important too, and are often the first stepping stone into spending time and indeed finding a career in nature. So with all of that complexity, all of the things that we have to keep in mind, and then on top of that, the complexities of the skills system with our MAs, FAs, GAs, SVQs, SQA, SDS, NCs, all the acronyms, we can find ourselves in a bit of a holding pattern, waiting for the go, the definitive answer on what is the right thing to do, which isn't always in our nature, certainly not in mine. It isn't comfortable when the clock is ticking and the next generation is increasingly becoming the current generation. So to go back to my earlier question, where to start? Well, of course, new technologies have the potential, new technologies have the potential to bring novel solutions, some of which we will hear about today. Green tech, blue tech, all offer exciting new opportunities to do things differently, capture data that allows us to check whether we're making that right decision. But they aren't the only option. The metals, for example, required in some of our new technologies like copper, lithium, and the rarer earth metals take a lot of energy to extract and are often very difficult to recycle and are limited in supply. I mentioned earlier about timber being important in sustainable construction and in plastic alternatives, but also architects are increasingly looking at low-tech design approaches, such as wind catcher towers, designed to allow external cool air to flow through rooms and which let buildings be cooled using much less energy than air conditioning. Maybe not something that we're thinking about today, but certainly something that will be increasingly important within the future. The term low tech that I've got on my slide comes from Julia Watson's book of the same name and stands for traditional, ecological or environmental knowledge. But there's an increasing number of texts, blogs and publications coming into this arena, all suggesting alternative approaches that build on existing expertise, sometimes historic expertise, and I strongly encourage you to have a look into that whole area. So it is also incredibly important as we move into this new age that we don't lose our traditional skills and that traditional knowledge that might have the solutions that we're looking for in the future. Which is why I'm also so delighted that Skillseeker is here today. They've created an app that allows skill sharers to find that new and wider audience, because there is knowledge out there that can help, sometimes paired with new technology, that will help us to revolutionise our approach to land use. But who best to listen to? Because there are a lot of experts online, a lot of voices, and that can get incredibly chaotic. Who to listen to? Well, I particularly like this quote from J.C. Powys, which is that culture is the bedrock, the final wall against which one leans one's back in a God-forsaken chaos. Isn't that a nice quote? So what is our culture though? So culture, according to Malcolm Bradbury, is a way of coping with the world by defining it in detail. Now that we do. If any of the reports are anything to go by, detail is something that we like. We have embraced that. So have we been creating our own cultures in the detail? Well, don't worry, I'm not going to get too highfalutin on this one. These are the cultures that I've been talking about. These are our cultures. Although it is now more commonly used to describe a shared pattern of behaviours, interactions and understandings, the term culture originally comes from the Latin culere, probably how you pronounced it, which means to tend to the earth and grow, to cultivate and to nourish. So this is where we have been defining our understanding of how to cultivate while tending to the earth. That's our cultures, and a great list of examples there, some of which you might be more familiar with: aquaculture, agriculture, horticulture, silviculture. We've even got bombiculture, that's probably my favourite one to pronounce, using insects to pollinate crops. So there is knowledge out there, and although each of our cultures might be slightly different, it doesn't exist in isolation. So although some of the presentations today from our diverse cultures might not be something from your particular area or sector, I'm sure there will be something of interest or overlap for everyone. Something high-tech or low-tech perhaps that could be of relevance to a project that you're working on.